Welcome into the winner's circle where we relive the iconic moments of the 2023 disc golf season with the people who make those moments happen. And now joining me is one of my favorite people in the sport of disc golf, one of my co-commentators, and also just one of my favorite people to watch throw the disc, Juliana Korver. Thank you for giving us your time and joining us today. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you for the honor of letting me sit right here next to you.
Well, we're going to throw it back. I know you've kind of had two different careers in disc golf as a competitor, so to speak. You took a little bit of a break after your first stint, but we're going to throw it back to that first stint. We're going to go back to 2001 at the World Championships. That was a very special year for you. Can you talk about 2001 in general and where your life was, where your career as a player was?
That was right in the middle of my initial touring. I was probably playing some of the best golf that I have played in my life, and 2001 was a seminal year because that was the year that disc golf was going to make its debut on the world stage with the World Games. So, following this event, actually, Barry and I flew to Japan to represent the United States in the World Games.
Now talk about this world championship. I mean, the sport has taken you all over the world. Clearly, you got to go over to Japan and represent the United States, but not until you won another world title. Throw it back, set the stage. Where were you, and how were you feeling that week going into the world championship?
It was more than 20 years ago. Um, I cannot tell you where my mindset was, but what I do remember about that week is that it was exceptionally hot. And this is back in the days where we would play 2 rounds a day. And actually, some of the courses we played 4 rounds a day, and you would play 1 and 3 or 2 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
So we were out there from dawn until dusk. And actually, before the tournament started, there was a Minnesota Vikings football player that died of heat stroke in the same heat. We were
Mm-hmm.
in Minnesota at the time, and that was just an example of the dangerous heat that we were experiencing. Thankfully, the courses were significantly shorter, so we didn't have 4-hour rounds. It's probably 2-hour rounds. And the other thing that I really stands out, and anybody who was on the course with me at the time probably remembers this. Um, One of the courses had ground hornets, bees,
Yep.
and at one point during the round, the person who was watching, I used to travel with two little Italian greyhounds, 6 and 7 pound dogs that look like shrinky dink actual greyhounds. They're just tiny and alien looking and adorable. Well, one of them came out to watch, well, both of them came out to watch me play. And one of them stepped on one of these nests in the woods and got covered with 20 hornets, and the poor thing was screaming at the top of her lungs, and I'm pretty sure everybody on the course heard the poor little thing as everybody around us stopped to come to the aid of my little dog.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was extremely stressful.
Luckily, you were playing some of the best golf of your life. I mean, I think otherwise that would have been tough to kind of keep the focus. Let's actually throw it into the final round highlights that we're going to kind of talk through. And just looking right here, even just production value, how far disc golf has come. But man, talk about disc golf at this time. Talk about maybe this day, kind of what we were setting up for.
Well, just looking at that photo, I see Jason Steffing, the guy who got me into the sport originally. I see Rick Rostein, who was the editor of the magazine. Back then, the people in the gallery were typically the people who had been playing earlier that week because the final round was just for the top contenders.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we didn't have enough people coming in to make up a gallery. Oh, I saw my mom in the gallery there too. We made up the gallery with other players.
And they're presenting you as the defending champion. Are you feeling nervous going into this final line action?
Oh, I'm sure I was always nervous, and I never took anything for granted. Um, I know I had a lead going into this, but I never um, tried to rely on that. It was
Mhm.
always push push forward and and don't let up until the very end.
And now we're seeing Leslie here. Talk about these competitors you're going up against in this final nine. Probably some names a lot of newer players to disc golf don't recognize.
Leslie Herndon, she was a former amateur world champion. She was a um, ballerina. She was incredibly beautiful on the tee, and she used to teach dance. And her strength was really around the green. She was an exceptional putter.
And a lot of people still know Elaine King. She's still playing at a high level right now. And the throwing form really hasn't changed in decades. She's still just as smooth as she was back in 2001.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And let's talk about Brigitte Lagerholm. This is a European player that came over here. Talk about her story and kind of what you see from her as a player.
A European player came over here. Brigitte is the first and, well, still only, well, I'm sorry, she until Kristen's reign, she was the only European player to win Worlds. Now, at this point, she had not yet won her title. That came a few years later in 2004 in Des Moines. But Brigitte was very, very powerful, and she was so funny. I really loved playing with her. One of my favorite people to play with.
Nice high release, a few good drives, and yeah, at this point, talk about the course that y'all are playing. Talk about the stage and maybe how it differs from what you see today.
I couldn't even tell you the name of the course that we're at. I don't remember where we played the finals. I can remember the holes, but I can't remember the name of the course. But I can tell you it was significantly shorter than what we play today. There was a par four, or there definitely wasn't a par five. Um, it was it was well, we call it old school golf. It was just, uh, but also remember we had different plastic then. I mean, the fastest speed back then, I'm not sure, 9, 10 at the time.
What were you throwing mainly back during maybe that first stint on tour? And were there any discs that came out and stuck out in your mind in 2001?
That's a very good question. In 2000, we called it candy plastic back then came out, the CE plastic, which is now basically champion plastic, and that was a big, big step forward. So I was throwing. Well, Valkyrie was my go-to driver, um, but the TL, so
Mm-hmm.
T-bird top, leopard bottom in the candy plastic was just a magic disc for me. And if you see me throwing a red disc, that's probably what that was.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very straight flyer.
Little spin stepper.
That would have been with a JK AVRX.
And at this time, Elaine King has already amassed multiple titles under her belt as well. Did
She,
you ever look up
she
to her as a player when you're coming on the scene?
100%, absolutely. She was already a five-time world champion. She was the queen of the sport when I came into it. So she was who I was trying to track down initially.
It's a big wide open shot. What line are you trying to line up here? What distance lines did you like to throw?
I have always been kind of a hyzer flip girl. But again, that also speaks to the plastic that we had, because
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have super overstable plastic to begin with, so it was um, more rare to do the forceful turnover
Mm-hmm.
shot.
Yeah, actually, I kind of want to ask you that question. Did you ever have a time when an overstable disc came out that you felt like, okay, now is my time to learn this hard flex shot, or did you always stay loyal to kind of that hyzer flip release?
Yeah, I never felt like that was something that I wanted to spend time on. It's not that I couldn't do the shot or didn't like the shot or didn't
Hmm.
want the shot. I just felt like it wasn't as controllable,
Hmm.
and so it, it was not necessary.
Yeah.
Boy, these these holes look so mundane now. There's nothing in the way. Though that was partially done. This was possibly a safari final nine. That's
Hmm.
usually what they did, and they would often do it in an area that it made it very easy for the crowd to view.
Sounds very familiar. It sounds like just a classic problem that we've had to solve in the world of disc golf. How can we make things interesting on the course, but also make it interesting for the people watching? But yeah, this looks like a long slew of open holes.
I believe we get to a few more interesting wooded holes a little bit later on in the final nine. Um, but that was a pretty good crowd that we had back then.
I mean, you're kind of going to watch two of, like you said, the queens of the game at the time. I mean, you're about to be the two-time champion, Elaine, looking for her sixth.
Actually, this was 2001, so I'm going for my fourth title at this
Hmm.
time.
And like you said, nice putt there from Leslie. Have you seen anything from her recently? Does she still play disc golf? Have you kept in touch with her?
When I first got back into the sport, she was out playing a little bit again, which was very exciting for me. She's, as I said, she's such a pretty player, and back then because there were so few of us, um, you got to play with the same people frequently,
Hmm.
and so I knew her quite well and knew her game quite well, and I believe she's now in maybe the Los Angeles area, and I think she's teaching dancing again.
Kind of a sour reaction on that shot. The people are loving it. Talk to me. I mean, as we kind of just watch reactions from the players here, talk to me about 2001 in general. You said this was some of the best golf that you've ever played in your life. Would you say that it's your best season that you've ever had?
It may have been. I think 2001 is the year that I cashed at the USDGC, and I think that I won everything um, in FPO other than maybe the Great Lakes Open to probably Elaine. I had 2 years where I won almost everything, and I believe 2001 was one of them.
I asked Ken Climo when I interviewed him if he liked having that target on his back and everyone kind of looking to beat him, and he said he at least feels like he did like that. Did you enjoy knowing that everyone was out to get you and you were the one that people were chasing down?
No, no, not at all. Uh, I I actually loved the climb. I loved uh, the support that I felt from everybody in just seeing if I could get there. But once I
Hmm.
got there, um, the support was still there for a considerable amount of time. But then, it's it becomes more exciting to see other people climb, and
Hmm.
as opposed to seeing somebody stay at the top. And so I did feel people um, hoping that some of these young players would eclipse me, and so it felt a little frantic to me, similar to the feeling you get when you it's kind of silly, but like if you're playing paintball and people are out to get you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's not a fun feeling. And so no, I actually had some anxiety over that. Uh, it was fun being on top, but it was more fun to climb.
Yeah, I mean, I guess going along with that, you said even after this tournament, you got to go and fly overseas to Japan because you were so recognized and so notable. How was that experience for you? Was it just a complete culture shock being so popular?
It truly was. So we went to Akita, Japan to play in the World Games, and there were 6 countries that sent both a male and a female representative, and we played match play over there. And for the first time ever, I mean, USDGC had an aura around it, but for the first time ever, I really felt like a professional athlete, a kind of like a superstar in some respects. There were people that met our bus when we arrived at the lodging, and there were people with signs, and it was really extraordinary.
Just jammed a big putt back there. I can't help but look at the baskets you all are playing on. Is that a single chain basket that you're putting on right now?
I would guess so, yeah. And that was sure single chains, but look at how many chains there are.
True.
That was one of the better catching baskets at the time, because if you go back a few years earlier, you'd see a lot shorter trays and sparser chains. So putting definitely has evolved, and you can put much more strongly at a basket now than you ever could back then.
How much were you worried about spit outs when you were putting on some of these earlier baskets? Did the thought ever cross your mind?
Well, it crossed your mind, but it wasn't. I mean, that was just part of the game. That's how we. So, as I mentioned, this basket actually looked at how many chains there were. So we were actually playing on baskets that were quite robust for the time. So no, I wasn't worried. It was
Hmm.
it was kind of a relief. Oh, these are very strong. We don't have to worry about that
Yeah.
right now.
Perspective is a very powerful thing. I think it's probably more surprising when you get a spit out on today's baskets versus maybe on something in years past. Did you ever jump putt? Did you ever go for those long kind of jump putt approaches, or was it always a throw?
Well, at that distance, it's always been a throw.
Hmm.
And noticed I had a red putter that I approached with. That could be the same red putter that I have in my bag, because that
Really?
disc that disc is about 23 years old. So back then it would have been just maybe its first year in my bag or second year in my bag.
Are you still throwing it for the same purpose? Is it still an approach disc for you?
Yes, yes. It's just a,
Wow.
a regular DX AVR, red DX AVR. Yes.
Is it cut up and beat up to oblivion, or is it
Oh,
still
beautifully so.
pretty good?
No, no,
Okay.
no, that's the reason why it's in my bag, is because it's so beat up and so beat in, and I can put some nose up on it and really control the line, and it's not going to go too far past. And it's not the only one I have. I have
Mhm.
another red, and I have a couple that are periwinkle color, but that's probably the same disc.
Are there any things, and this is just out of curiosity, any things that you feel like you do better now that you came back to the tour that you were doing in 2001? Do you feel like you improved in any category?
No, no. um, I what I would say that this is maybe not the best example of my skills at the time.
Hmm.
I've been off quite a bit. I've always been a fairly accurate player, and I was mm, much more. I'm not sure if driven's the right word
Hmm.
back then. Uh, Definitely had more concrete goals as far as what I wanted to do in the
Hmm.
sport. Um, so no, I don't think that I am any part of my game is better now than it was back then. Though with the technology and um, just the increases in the sport,
Hmm.
I have increased along with it, but I don't think I have eclipsed my former self.
Going for an aggressive roller there. How often were you throwing rollers back then? Was that a novelty shot for you, or is that something that you practiced a decent amount?
Oh, I practiced everything. uh, I didn't practice it as much as I practiced other shots.
Hmm.
But yeah, it wasn't just a, oh, I think I'll try this.
Yeah.
It was calibrated.
I ask this because rollers are kind of a quirky thing. Some people actually go to the field and they will experiment with rollers, and some players just kind of feel through it as they play practice rounds. What kind of player were you in regards to that shot?
Everything in the field. I absolutely every practice in the
Wow.
field. So when I first started, well, first there weren't that many courses.
Yeah.
So I had to go to a field to play. And then I actually thought at one point in my career, I thought it was a waste of time to go play around because I could get so many more shots in on the field than I could at a course.
It is so intriguing to see that red putter come out of your hand and now know that it's the exact same one that you're still throwing. Are there any other discs in your bag that are that old that you've been throwing?
Nope, nope. That's definitely the oldest, that old DX AVR.
Is there a specific temperature limit now that you take it out in?
um, I don't consciously think about that, but you're right. If I were to go outside, so I'm in Montana right now, and if I were to go outside and play, I wouldn't be throwing that around the trees. I'm not sure I've ever broken an AVR. I used to break Cobras all the time.
Is that just the mold just like lends itself more to getting cracked when it's cold outside, or?
It was probably just the disc that I threw the most
Hmm.
um, in those situations. Interestingly enough, we saw Brigitte get a little bit of encouragement back then, and um, for those who are playing for Castoplast, that's now the owner of Castoplast who was encouraging Brigitte on the sidelines.
Wow, I did not know that. Did not know he was in the game for that long. That's awesome. Another big shot. At this point, are you feeling like the win is locked up? Are you just trying to put on a show at this point? I know your lead is decently sizable.
I am probably so excited about Japan that I have sort of overlooked the end of this event a tiny bit. I think I have more than 5 strokes with fewer than that number of holes left. So I'm probably feeling pretty comfortable, though I'm trying not to let that
Hmm.
realization actually come to the surface yet.
I'm also seeing a lot of green space to land the disc. I guess I'm so used to seeing white staked OB everywhere. What was the OB setup looking like at this World Championship?
The I cannot recall. So the lines that you see right there, that's to keep the crowd back, not
Hmm.
for out of bounds. I don't think there was any out of bounds other than maybe
Wow.
a road or natural to the course
Hmm.
sidewalks or something that were there initially. Yeah, putting additional OB around was not something that was done.
And now it's wild to see all the white staked OB and the longer distances, and you see these scores coming in. And it's just year after year, it seems like everybody's just getting better and better and better. And I guess that's why maybe I asked you, if you feel like you've gotten stronger in some categories because you have kept up with the game and you have been able to perform well as the courses have gotten longer, harder. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just very impressive.
Yeah, so part of that is expectations. You know, uh, for example, back then, if you were more than 40 feet from the basket,
Hmm.
it wasn't considered a putt; it was a layup. And
Hmm.
and now, there are women who are putting from 60 feet, 70
Hmm.
feet. So it's kind of evolving with the game,
Yeah.
and so there are things maybe that look like I might be doing better now, but it's if I had been doing the same thing with the skill set that I
Yeah.
had back then, um, I wouldn't I wouldn't be keeping up with my younger self.
True. And just like that, you did it again. Yet another world title. In this moment, how are you feeling?
Uh, uh, well, you can see the emotion in my face. I the very first worlds that I won was there was such a dam breaking of emotion after that final putt, and um, I still felt a little bit of that every single time,
Hmm.
repeating, and just it's just such a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
More outpouring of emotion. I know you said you had some family come up there. How's the support from them that week?
Absolutely wonderful. I didn't see my dad on coverage here, but oh, there he is in the red shirt on the left. That's my dad. He's no longer with us, and he was such a support for me. He himself was a spectacular athlete. He was actually drafted by the Atlanta Falcons,
Wow.
and he was so proud of me to be uh, doing what I was doing, even on that level back then. So uh, I, when I went on tour the first time, I was easily considered an adult.
Mhm.
I'd finished grad school, uh, but I still asked my parents permission, basically more their opinion, and they were both um, so supportive and so encouraging for me to go have that adventure. And uh, I would really have loved for him to be able to see me kind of reliving that
Mhm.
in on such a bigger stage now.
Well, Juliana, I'm sure with everything that you're doing, whether it's behind the mic or still out there on the course, I mean, Kristen Tatar herself said she wanted to be you when she grew up. I'm sure your father's looking down, just smiling right now, so proud. And thank you so much again for your time. I guess I wanted to give you the floor one more time for all the people back home that are watching. What do you have going on in your life, and what do you have to say to them?
Okay, I'll clear something up. So I mentioned that next year is going to look a little bit different because I'm no longer going after the tour championship. But I think that was misconstrued a little bit, and people may think that they're not going to be seeing me on the course next year, and that's not the case. I am still going to be out there. I'm still going to be playing. I'm just not going to be playing every single
Hmm.
uh, DGPT event, and by that I mean everyone that I'm not commentating. But I will be playing some, and um, doing more age protected with Jim. And yeah, we're planning on being out on the road all year again.
Well, that's fantastic news, and that means either you're playing or you're commentating, and I think both are just perfectly suited for you and your knowledge of the game. So again, thank you so much for your time. That's going to wrap things up for the winner's circle, and folks, we will see you next time for more disc golf content.